If you have ever doubted the intelligence of the Necromorph horde, or at least their foresight on how to handle a particular species effectively, then this creature should shed some light on the deviousness of the Brethren Moons. In the deepest areas of hydroponics, which is responsible for cleaning the air and breaking down the buildup of carbon dioxide into breathable oxygen, or O2, exists this Necromorph poisoning the air. You may have noticed that most of the Necromorphs are lethal death machines whose main purpose is just to kill and add bodies, quite literally, to the pile. This Necromorph in particular serves a much less aggressive role, as it doesn't stalk you or tear you apart or even really guard an area. No, this Necromorph is much more dangerous than any of the others, as you can't outrun what you have to breathe. I am certain the title gave it away, but we are discussing, of course, the Wheezer from Dead Space. This Necromorph is one that, when dealing with, doesn't serve much of a threat to anyone wearing standard rig armor, but those openly exposed wearing standard civilian clothing are going to experience some interesting effects on their body. These effects widely range depending on exposure levels, which increases as you get closer, but from what I have discovered, it would not take that much to be completely lethal and a viable form of attack, and quite important to the Necromorphs. However, before explaining what in God's name these things breathe out that makes it so lethal, let's first run down its morphology and see what can be discerned from that. First, this is a completely sessile Necromorph, much like the Corruption or the Wall Guardians, but they don't attack from the outside, they attack a human from the inside. Sitting on the floor of hydroponics, these Necromorphs are in a constant kneeling position. They cannot move or attack or even defend, and their purpose is just to keep breathing and coughing out poisonous air. One of the things I find interesting about their position is how they are kneeling. They almost appear like their last moments on Team Human were spent in a low oxygen environment, in a fit of coughing, or just straight up gasping for air. With either listed, eventually you become weak and will fall to your knees and almost assume this exact position as you try to take in air. This would be the final position this particular person would take as they were transformed, and also explain why they are even posed like this when Isaac stumbles across them later on. Wheezers appear to be the most human-like form out of all the Necromorphs on the Ishimura. Sporting much of the same features as a normal human, they still have all their limbs easily seen. What is abnormal, considering they are in fact Necromorphs, is the ears are visible as well as the face. Usually these features are lost or melted off, but as per usual, we will start with the feet and work our way up. The feet exist in, you guessed it, their exact human form. Not much has been changed here, with all the individual toes, the heels, and standard foot structures existing as nature intended. Moving further up the leg, we start to run into some strange sights that exist for probably one reason: necessity to maintain important position. The calves have fused with the thighs of this unfortunate victim, causing them to be permanently forced in a kneeling position. The skin in the area seems to have almost melted or been broken down and reformed over the legs. The thighs are that of a normal person, but have continued into the calves as mentioned previously. There is clearly a massive growth on the back of this creature, but let's save the best for last, shall we? The abdomen of the Necromorph is completely unseen, but presumably it would be in its normal form. This is purely hypothetical, but judging by its breathing patterns, I would assume that the organs have been altered to some degree. When we breathe, our diaphragm expands and could possibly keep expanding if our organs were not in the way. So considering this creature exists as a breathing machine, the organs may have actually eroded away and been used as biomass for the massive lungs. The arms of the Wheezer exist in their normal human form, however, much like the legs, they have begun to fuse with the body. The forearms in particular have fused with the legs, making it unable to defend itself or attack anything that gets close. The hands still have all 5 fingers, and this creeps me out as most Necromorphs, you can see that they are just straight up monsters, but this thing looks pretty human and reminds you of that every time it struggles to breathe. The other arm serves as a support role and does not appear to be fused with the body, instead stabilizing itself, creating 3 points of contact with the ground so that it can stay somewhat upright. The neck has been quite beefed up. It can be assumed that the trachea of the Wheezer has enlarged, but what is more probable is that the esophagus and trachea have fused together and expanded outwards, creating a mostly hollow neck surrounded by large muscle. This would also explain why the neck is larger in proportion, because as the hollow tube expanded, it just straight up pushed everything out. However, extensive mutations do not seem to be present on the face. The face looks wide-eyed and almost in a constant state of suffocation, which is probably how the person was game-ended, to be honest. Then we come to the all-important eyes. Notice how they are yellow? This is quite an important factor for later on. There exists no hair on its head, and ha! I did not mess that up like I did with the puker, with no head on hair. Anyhow, it is completely bald, but as previously stated, the ears can still be seen. Then we get to the growths. The ridiculously large growths. They were once the lungs of the person, but have since been overhauled. The rib cage would have had to have been cracked and moved to the side to allow the lungs to expand outwards in the way that they have. These lungs will inflate to almost the size of the entire person as they draw in oxygen from the surrounding area, lace it with volatile organic compounds, and release it back. Large, meaty bronchial tubes can be seen running back into the thoracic cavity of the person near the back of the neck. These lungs are pretty disgusting to look at as they inflate and deflate, but I imagine a lot of the internal organs or organs located around were used to bolster these lungs or just straight up used as biomass to form new lungs. An interesting side fact that you should probably know is that these lungs can get much larger than their current state. In Dead Space Martyr, it is stated that a Wheezer was found, and instead of lungs that were the size of its body, the lungs inflated to as large as a building. So it appears that space available is majorly important when the Wheezers turn into what they are. Smaller room, smaller lungs. Open atmosphere, massive lungs. What is also interesting as well is that the necromorphs seem to cough and gasp at certain points, suggesting that the cells have become irritated by the green particles and gases that it breathes out. Even though they appear to have been hijacked, they still react to stimulus and certain chemicals. So that's all well and good, but how do these lungs work and what causes them to be poisonous? Well, it's clear that the Wheezers are atmosphere changers and terraformers, but not in a traditional sense. Necromorphs do not actually need an atmosphere to survive, if you can call it that. Instead, they terraform the area to make it inhospitable to the native species. So here's the scenario. You're hanging out in your ship when one of these things gets in. At first, nothing is wrong. Then you start to notice yourself getting weaker when the ship's safety PA alerts you that air is becoming poisonous. Put on your suit, but you have no clue what could be causing this to happen. You search, and then you find it. This thing gasping for air on the ground. So what exactly is it doing this for? I believe the key to answering this question lies in the necromorph's eyes and the maintaining of its relative human form. The eyes show a large presence of viral bacteria that a necromorph outbreak is known for. This bacteria is existing in great quantities throughout the Wheezer's body. But so what, right? Don't most necromorphs contain this bacteria? Absolutely. But then, the skin of the creature also provides some clues as to why this is important. It's intact. How many necromorphs have you seen with completely intact skin? Very few and far between. Your skin is an important organ concerning your survival. It is a water-resistant, gas-resistant, and microbe-resistant barrier. It provides a really nice barrier for all your internal processes to run unhindered by the addition of outside elements, viruses, or bacteria that could disrupt things. Your skin does a great job whether you are human or necromorph, and that is exactly what it's doing. Its job. The skin is keeping out something very important: oxygen. In microbiology, we know of certain bacteria that thrive in anaerobic conditions. However, existing in these conditions has some effects that aren't desirable to humans and their survival. That is the production of certain organic compounds called methanol. Methanol is an alcohol that is exceedingly dangerous to a person, and worse yet, it can be aerosolized. How dangerous is it exactly? Well, it can easily lead to a coma and death given just a little bit of exposure. Your body naturally creates a very minuscule amount of methanol, but it is quickly excreted or broken down by the liver as not to cause harm. The main effect this has concerning the greatest impact on you is that it is a central nervous system depressant. So let's break down the process of how this thing actually takes you out, shall we? Starting with the necromorph, the bacteria invades a person, and judging by the lack of damage to the body, it is more than likely inhaled. Here, it begins to change the lungs of the person. As the lungs are converted, the person would find it harder and harder to breathe. They would eventually collapse as their lungs would no longer be supplying oxygen to the bloodstream to power the brain or muscles. You know, it's actually quite similar to the feeders in the respect that it just takes over an organ, except rather than the feeders who actually ate necromorph tissue and then starved to death, they are breathing in the bacteria and then suffocating. Pretty interesting how it targets certain organs it comes into contact with. Anyhow, this explains why they are in a kneeling and gasping position when you find them. Upon their expiration, the body begins to undergo its changes. The lungs burst out from the back of the Wheezer due to their newfound biomass, but open air hasn't breached the body. The lungs take in the oxygen in great quantities, and the oxygen is turned into carbon dioxide as the metabolism of the body has been kicked into overdrive, and is then laced with methanol and more than likely numerous other VOCs, or we'll just say right now, volatile organic compounds. We're just going to call them VOCs. The bacteria is creating from its resources as it plunders the body. These VOCs are exhaled from the mouth of the Necromorph. Quickly, this begins to corrupt the surrounding air of the Wheezer, making it highly poisonous. For a while, these VOCs are in low enough parts per million, or ppm, that it does not affect the surrounding area, but over time, they begin to build up. Eventually, the ventilation of the area is compromised as oxygen levels dip and methanol levels rise. This is where you come into play. Hammond is a great example of this. Sitting on the ground, barely able to move, and exceedingly weak, methanol is inhaled by you and begins to wreak havoc on your central nervous system. Your body will do what it does and break it down into formaldehyde and formic acid, which will highly just completely scar the liver. This can lead to a whole host of issues such as metabolic acidosis, which basically means that your body's being poisoned by something becoming more acidic. Your nervous system will get weaker as cells are destroyed by apoptosis and demyelination. The brain experiences lesion formations and your lungs would begin to hemorrhage as cells in the area die, weakening the circulatory system's integrity in that part of the lung. It, as expected, has a massive impact on your consciousness and processes, leading to vertigo affecting balance, inability to remember or learn new information, and convulsions. It should be noted that there are more lethal issues surrounding the intake of this chemical, but these are the main ones that will basically put you out of commission efficiently and quickly. The methanol's effects are quite profound. The minimum needed dose to be toxic is around a range of 100 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. Considering the average male is 70 kilograms, that means a measly 7 grams would be needed to kill you. God, I hope I did that math scaling correctly. I'm like 80% sure I did. King Henry died by drinking chocolate milk, right? Anyways, this amount could be breathed in over time quite easily, leading first to a weakness in muscularity, trouble with concentration and thinking, and overall issues controlling your body. This would make it very easy for a necromorph to pick you off as you couldn't fight back effectively. This endgame is designed to take out those still fighting the necromorphs or resisting the signal's corruption of the mind by affecting the air you breathe. Isaac, for instance. As stated, this clearly shows the intelligence of the necromorph, or at minimum the collective hive mind's intelligence. The Wheezer can be found on the ship in the one area responsible for air purification and begins to destroy life support. On a planet, you could build a massive tower and survive against the necromorphs if you were immune to the effects of the marker signal, but in the end, the air would turn against you and you would succumb to the VOCs and lack of oxygen. Seems like the Brother Moons have contingency plans upon contingency plans for any wily species being so arrogant as to try to survive. Approaching a Wheezer is not dangerous to a human as long as you have an ample air supply and equipment providing a barrier between skin and air, as methanol can be absorbed through the skin. Wheezers are relatively weak and can be taken out with just a few stomps of your foot. There is not really a death scene for Isaac, however, an interesting thing does happen when you suffocate. You just kind of float away. The game seems to think that you are in space for some reason. This is more likely due to the fact that the game uses the same script as the 0G0 air death. But hold on, I'm going to try something new here. Let's do sort of like a game spotlight, and let me know what you guys think about this being a quick blurb at the end. I was on Reddit the other day as one of my subs commented mentioning a game called Negative Atmosphere, which is a new IP inspired by Dead Space. So I went to check it out, and this game looks pretty solid so far. I got in contact with the dev responsible for creating the game, and he has got a lot of cool monsters. He mentioned the possibility that maybe a demo may be on the horizon. Now, the game is in very early alpha stages, or even previously or prior to alpha stages, so don't expect it out like soonish, but it looks like something that I would definitely want to play, so I just wanted to bring it to y'all's attention. So if you are interested in seeing the Necromorphs, which is the nickname given to them for right now because they actually do not have a name, then head on over to r/negative atmosphere to kind of see the cool things going on over there. I'll link it in the description, and I'm pretty sure I'll be keeping up with this game as it goes along because, as I said, it does look pretty cool. So there you have it. This is how the Necromorphs overcome the weapons and contingency plans by simply removing your main source of life, the literal air you breathe. Sure, you could get some air scrubbers, but who would really have access to that in mass? Anyhow, I hope you enjoyed me covering the Wheezers from Dead Space. Truly a terrible way to go, but at least you aren't maliciously deformed like the other Necromorphs. If you are new and enjoyed the video, then subbing is a great way to keep up with the channel. Also, hitting that bell probably does something. I say probably because I get comments saying sometimes people still don't get notified, but hey, you never know, it might work for you. Also, leaving a like is a great way to help the video kind of get out there if you did enjoy it, and I would definitely appreciate it. Also, do you have a Twitter? Excellent. Want to follow someone who tweets out nonsense? Even more excellent. I will drop a link in the description, but it is at Roanoke Gaming with 2 N's if you are interested in that. I will also put my Discord and Patreon link in the description. I would like to thank my patrons, of course. At the Scientist tier, we have Layla Alizarin, and then next up we got your boy Bowen Goodwin. Our 3 residents are A. Laurentis, Evan Osborne, and Richard Muhlenberg. Holding it down with their PhD in genetics, we have Andrew Lawson, Divine Whisper, John Russo, Laffy No Skill, and Steve N. Our masters in biology are Adam Hartswick, Cameron Smith, and Scott Grant. And finally, with their bachelors in morphological sciences, we have Ahigao Comics, Alex the Gun Guy, Dustin Ellis, Eric Scott Gillies, Greater Genes 83, Jims, Joseph Radical, Professor Bennips, and Zachary Baker. Thank you guys for your support. So the last video on Resistance was a success. I'm glad everybody enjoyed the extra bit of lore. Expect longer videos over this stuff in the near future, as well as like the actual biology. And as we go on, when I introduce newer topics, I'll be able to make those videos longer as well. It was just kind of a new thing I was trying, so bear with me on it. Anyhow, thanks for watching Roanoke Gaming, and I will see y'all in the next one.